at the end of the day, if you're looking to invest your capital, working with a good fund manager could save you thousands.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into yet another episode of the Freedom Point. I'm so glad you're here with us again today. I've got another amazing guest, as I do always, Dallon Schultz. Dallon, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you. Just to give my listening audience a little bit of a background on Dallon. Dallon's a seasoned fund manager and co-founder of Capitallyst Pro, an automated CRM solution designed to help real estate investors raise capital more efficiently and effectively. Since beginning his real estate journey in 2018, Dallon has progressed from managing a fourplex to participating in multimillion-dollar acquisitions, with current projects exceeding $150 million and projections reaching $350 million in the coming year. Dallon, you've been in the space for a while. In full disclosure, I've not yet had a guest on my show to talk specifically about capital raising in the real estate syndication space. So I'm really looking forward to the value that you're going to provide our listening audience today. But before we get into it, we'd love to learn a little bit more about your background, what you're focused on today, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up, ironically, in a multifamily home. My grandfather owned a bunch of multifamily apartments. My father was the landlord, and I grew up doing all the dirty grunt work, the swapping out toilets, roofing, shingling roofs, doing all that dirty grunt work. So that was my view of real estate as a kid growing up, and I swore off of it. I was like, this is terrible. I want to do something a little bit more cush, something that maybe made a little bit more money. Looking back, my view was extremely skewed in that regard. But I always had a desire to serve people and make an impact. So that actually drew me into the medical field. And so I didn't go down the MD route. That was too much schooling for me. I'm not a fan of school, but I'll do what I got to do to get the job done. So I actually went down the registered nurse route, and I wanted to become specialized in that, become a nurse anesthetist. They're the ones that give you the anesthesia when you go under for surgeries, because they made a few $100,000 a year, and that was important to me. I wanted to be financially well off, and I liked the medical field because there's always a need. There's always demand. So there's some safety and some security there for me. And so I started going down that path and got my bachelor's in nursing, started working in the emergency room. And a couple months after starting that career, I broke my leg playing soccer and I wasn't able to work. And in that moment, I realized something had to change, because at that time, my wife and we had 2 kids. And I remember laying there in the hospital bed, in the ER that I worked at. So that was kind of embarrassing, but just wondering how I was going to provide for my family. And Jeremy, that scared the shit out of me. I mean, as a father, as a husband, like, you know this, like, our number one responsibility is to take care of our family. And it scared me. And I realized that if something like this was to happen again, I needed to have some sort of other income, some sort of revenue stream, because I knew people would get sick and hurt. That's why I went into the medical field. I failed to realize what would happen if that was me. So that's really what jump-started I would say my re-entry into the real estate space, more so from the ownership point of view. So read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'm sure a lot of people have. And 2 weeks after reading that book, we bought our first fourplex without any of our own money. I read that book and something in my mind just clicked. It was just the right time, right book, everything aligned. And that's really what jump-started my career And then fast forward a few years and started learning about syndications and funds and just went through that natural progression. And so we operate a $10 million fund of funds at this point, and we invest in large multifamily properties across the country. And that's where we are today.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that journey. I'd like to go back to that fourplex that you acquired back in 2018. You mentioned leveraging other people's money. So I'd like for you to explain to our listening audience what you mean by, acquiring a 4-unit property in 2018 with largely little to none of your own money.
So that first fourplex that we purchased, it was owned outright by the owner. He was an older gentleman. And because he owned it outright, we didn't have to worry about getting a loan or a mortgage or bring in any sort of bank. So we tapped into, which I didn't know then, I didn't know this was a thing, I know it now, is seller financing. So that owner was willing to hold or carry $175,000 of that $200,000 value of that property, meaning we had to bring $25,000 of our own money to the table. And we didn't have it. Like I said, I just graduated nursing school and taking care of family. We weren't making a ton of money, but I did reach out to my grandfather, the one that I mentioned at the start of the podcast. He was in real estate. He knew multifamily, and we worked out an agreement with him, and he loaned us the $25,000. So at this point, I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, just full disclosure. We were 100% leveraged on that first fourplex. We had none of our own money in it, which is great, but we borrowed 100% of the money. And I wouldn't recommend that. But again, you don't know what you don't know. And I was ready to do anything to get started. And so that's how we got into that first one.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And now fast forward to today. I mean, really what you're largely doing is you're helping to raise investor capital from your own existing investor base, in addition to teaching and educating and training and providing resources to others that are doing the same thing. That being said, I would love for you to explain to our audience specifically what it means to be a fund manager or a capital raiser in the real estate investment space, and why there's an advantage to investors to partner with these types of individuals.
There's a lot we can unpack there. So I guess keeping it simple, for anyone looking to get started investing in real estate, there's really 2 ways to do that. You find the deal, you bring the deal to the table, or you bring the money. In that example of that first fourplex, I didn't have the money, but we found the deal. So then we partnered with somebody with the money, and we sourced it. We managed that deal. We did everything. We did all the grunt work. We did whatever we had to do to get that deal done. So really there's 2 ways to get involved. You bring the deal or you bring the money. And we started going after the deals. It was exciting. I was learning how to underwrite deals. And I think that's where everybody should start, whether you want to be active investor like you and I, Jeremy, or if you want to be a passive investor, which you and I also do. You need to know the story behind the numbers. So that would be my first recommendation to anyone. But after going through that for a few years and finding some deals and finding some success, one of the best deals we participated in was one that we sourced and that we found, and then we found the capital to come in. But with that being said, I realized I had this epiphany that if we could figure out the money game, if we could figure out where to raise the capital, we would never have to look for another deal again. And quite frankly, we were just getting kind of burned out. We were looking at a lot of deals. We were talking to brokers. Things weren't working out. And then I saw some of these other operators in the space that had way more experience than me that were still closing deals left and right. And they were looking for capital. And so I realized like something just clicked, and it's like, hey, if my network of capital is going to be different than theirs. So if I could build those relationships and start today, we would never have to look for a deal again, because those deals would start coming to us. So that's one of the reasons we decided to pivot more so from acquisitions and asset manager to more of a capital raiser. is one, we were playing to our strengths. I like connecting with people. I like sharing my story. I like helping them realize that you too can invest in these large apartment buildings. When I got started, I thought it was one really rich guy from like Dubai or Los Angeles or New York City that owned that apartment complex. And the reality is, I don't remember the number. It's probably like 70-80% of apartment buildings are owned by LLCs and syndications, the types of groups comprised of people like you and I, Jeremy, that put in $50,000, $100,000. We pool it together to buy these large assets. So once I realized that, I just felt like it was a mission to share that story with other people. And so that's why we really leaned into the capital raising side of the business. And the second part of your question there, as to why that could be beneficial to some people looking to get started. Up to that point, we had 4 or 5 years of experience under our belt running, sourcing, underwriting, operating those deals. So now we were in a unique position that we could easily vet those operators and those deals that we were investing into. And it's, I hate hearing the stories. You probably hear them as well. Somebody brand new, they got $50,000 from an inheritance or cashed out a retirement account, and they talked to so-and-so, and they had this incredible apartment deal that was putting out 40% returns every year. And they got excited about the numbers, the deal. They had some trust in that person, and they put it in just to find out that it wasn't a good opportunity. And so when you work with a good fund manager, they're really able to read between the lines just from their experience. They know what questions to ask. And at the end of the day, if you're looking to invest your capital, working with a good fund manager could save you thousands, because they probably made the mistakes that you might make if you didn't have the experience.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense to me. It's interesting that you talked about that investor in Dubai, which I also thought the same thing, right? I thought that most apartment buildings are owned by large institutional grade, investors and buyers. I'll never look at an apartment the same way again, because I now know the truth that oftentimes these apartment communities are largely owned by, operators, syndication teams that maybe they own one property and maybe they own 100 different properties, but one common theme is a lot of syndication sponsor teams leverage fund managers and capital raisers to allocate money in order to be able to acquire those properties. And as we all know, real estate is such a relationship business, right? And it's very difficult to raise capital from people unless you have an authentic, genuine relationship with them, right? Which is really, what the fund manager capital raiser space is all about, is the sponsor is able to leverage the relationship, with the capital raiser and really their network, right? And so for them, it's a cost of capital, right? I can honestly say I can have a meaningful relationship with maybe 200 or 300 individuals, but not 3,000 to 4,000 individuals, right? Very difficult for me to do that. So I really appreciate your commentary there. I would suspect that there's other benefits that the limited partner passive investor that's looking to invest in real estate isn't maybe sure where to go. Maybe they understand that the best types of opportunities out there are not the ones that are advertised in the public domain. So can you maybe speak specifically around kind of the way in which the passive investor is able to leverage the capital raisers' access to their network, their knowledge, their relationships, their time, their deal flow, those types of things?
It's really comes down to time. I know we're talking a lot about money and investing in real estate. Uh, Money comes and goes. Time doesn't. And a lot of the people that we work with, they're, I'd say, upper to middle class type of people. These aren't your big institutions. These aren't people making $1 million a year. They might be making anywhere from 150,000 to 600,000 a year. So they make decent money. They have money sitting in a retirement account, but they're busy. They're busy professionals. They're spending their time and energy in other areas, but they get to a point, and it's interesting. It's usually right around like, I'd say like mid 40s, where they're like, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to be retiring soon. And I don't have a lot of money to retire off of, even though I've been working my butt off all these years. And so they start looking for ways to accelerate the growth of their money and get their money working for them. And part of that is how quick can you get it to work for you in the right deal, and a deal that's going to protect it, preserve it as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate your perspective on kind of that wealth preservation, outside of the fact that real estate can produce, consistent, predictable cash flow with equity upside and tax benefits, around that. One of the big reasons why, I became a real estate investor back in 2012 was really to utilize real estate as a hedge against the inflation monster, which has been certainly a very big impact, or has had a very big impact on people's ability to generate and build wealth, which has also prevented a lot of people from being able to step off of the corporate W-2, hamster wheel, because of just the cost of things keep going up, right? And so that's really one of the main, tools or powerful ways in which we can build wealth is through real estate.
I'm Zach Captainstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
I know that Capitallyst Pro was born out of recognizing inefficiencies in capital raising processes. What are some of the key challenges that you noticed with capital raisers and their abilities to raise capital, and how does your platform address them?
It really comes down to following up and maintaining that relationship. And we're guilty of this as well. And we've since changed, and we're helping others. But it's easy to fall into this trap of, in the process of raising capital, you're so focused on vetting the deals, vetting the operators, then an opportunity presents itself, then you're like, oh, okay, now we need to bring money to it. And so you go to your investor base and you start asking for money. And we've been guilty of maybe not maintaining those conversations or those relationships as frequently as we should. So it sometimes came across like the only time we were talking to investors is when we wanted their money. And that's not good for building a relationship. Everything about capital raising is on building relationships. So our tool really helps just through automation, touch points, through emails. Even if it's not you personally reaching out, at least they know what you're doing, what you're up to. So we have a lot of automated email nurturing, automated task creation. Because to be honest, there's so much in my day, I forget what I have to do in a few hours. And so with this automated task creation, it just reminds me like, hey, I need to reach out to Jeremy. Let me give Jeremy a call. Let me send him a selfie video. Let him know that I'm thinking about him. And so we integrate a lot of that stuff just to help keep ourselves and our users consistent with that outreach and organized.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I could imagine that as a capital raiser continues to grow and scale their business, it's easy to maintain, a quasi healthy relationship with 20 or 30 people. But when you start talking about scaling and growing, through referrals and, attracting investors through social media, types of efforts, that list can grow pretty quickly to 2 to 300, if not 2 to 3,000. And so I think based upon what you're telling me here, Dallon, is that you guys have really kind of figured out, ways in which you can help support capital raisers so that they can stay in front of and stay relevant, with their investor base. Am I saying that correctly?
100%. And it's not, I think some people feel guilty, like they have to take notes on their conversation with people. Um, that's the reality of it though. And taking notes, I think you're doing a disservice by not taking notes for that person, because if done right, you have a product, you have a service that could truly help that person. No one's going to hold it against you if you don't remember the name of all their kids. I don't like to make me sound bad. Okay. It's hard for me when I go to pick up a prescription and the pharmacist asks me what one of my kids' birthdays is. I have to buffer for a few seconds. I know their birthdays, but it takes time. So I think people are very understanding of you not remembering all the details. But if you had a short note on that conversation with that person that you could refer back to, it lets them know that you genuinely took interest in that conversation enough for you to even write down some notes. And so I think there shouldn't be any guilt or shame around that. At the end of the day, we're trying to help as many people as we can, and you just can't you can only keep track of so many relationships in your life.
Yeah, that's so true. And the advice that you give, Dallon, and the way that you help support people isn't just a message to capital raisers. Okay, it's really a message to anybody. If you're in a sales capacity, or you're a small business owner, or anything in between, this type of advice can be very powerful when implemented. I know that you're a fellow podcast host of the Millionaire Mind podcast. And as a direct result of that, I'm sure that you've had the similar opportunity that I have to speak with many, high achievers, right? And so what's the reoccurring, mindset or habits that you see that drive success with those that you've interviewed on your podcast?
It's a great question. Number one is they show up. They do what they say they're going to do. So there's a consistency that seems to be interwoven into everything in their life. They show up. And number two, some of the most successful people I've met, especially by interviewing them on that podcast, is they want to serve. They want to give and they want to serve. And they truly, truly care about the people that they take care of. And I think that was one of the biggest realizations I had about hosting that podcast, because I think, unfortunately, the world has a view of what successful men and women look like. And I've come to realize that that's not the reality. And some of the most successful people I've met are the most generous, most giving, most servant-minded people that would give the shirt off their back to somebody else. So I'd say it's a consistency in showing up and working hard, and just that desire to serve and make an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with that. And I would say the same for those that I engage with. I also did a little bit of pre-call planning before the session today, and I learned that your motto is be efficient and be effective. So can you share a practical example of how this mindset really, transformed your business operations or maybe even your personal life?
Yeah. So let me break it down a little bit. So I realized you can be efficient with things. And when I say efficient, think of time. You can do a lot of things in a short period of time. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you could be effective. You can, the results oriented, the productivity could be there, but it might take a lot of time. And what we always try to do with everything, with our relationships, with our systems, with our business, is how do we bring those two together to become efficiently effective? Meaning you're having high productive tasks done in a timely manner. And you asked of a specific example. One of them, for example, is an example of being efficient would be sending one email to your entire list of 2,000 investors. Okay, that's efficient. Is it effective? You can make that argument. Now, on the other side, being effective would be calling each person on your list and taking 20, 30 minutes of your day talking to them. That could be effective, but you can only do so many of those in a day. So how do we become efficiently effective? We use email marketing, we use text message marketing, and we also track who's opening and clicking our emails. and we're giving them a certain amount of points. We're scoring them basically on how engaged they are with us. So all of that is working in the background. That's being efficient, so that when we are making those phone calls, because I don't think you can automate any relationship. So you still need to have that personal touch. But if we could look at our list and see who's been most engaged with us, now we can make those phone calls much more confidently, knowing that that person is interested in stuff that we've been putting out. So that's an example in the capital raising side of things of how we're efficiently effective and how we use that personal touch and tools that are there in front of us to bridge the gap so we can get the most done in the shortest period of time.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I can definitely see how that would be a tremendous value to your client base. What advice would you give to somebody just starting out for the first time? So you've got that busy professional that's out there, that's an investor themselves in a half a dozen different deals as a limited partner investor, and they want to, take the next step to monetizing their network and bringing investment opportunities, to their personal family and friends. What would be maybe kind of the first couple of steps that you'd recommend for that individual?
I have them reach out to you, Jeremy, because that's exactly what you went through, and figure out how to set up a syndication or a fund. And I think going through it a handful of times yourself kind of helps blaze the path. And then people in your network, in your community, once you've gone through it and put your capital at risk and you've learned a good process of how to do it, then you should probably start considering bringing other people along for the ride. As long as your systems, your processes, your experience are there and are set up truly for the best interest or the most interest of the people that you're going to be working with. So there's a lot of different programs out there. There's mentorships, there's groups, there's attorneys. You don't need to go through a mentorship group. You could just go to an attorney and say, hey, this is what I want to do. And they'll help you draft up all the legal documentation and things that you need to do. There is a compliance and legal side to raising capital, and I'm sure you talk about that all the time. So you can't just start willy-nilly posting on social media that you're raising capital for your next real estate deal. There's a lot of regulation and things you have to follow and abide by to the SEC law. So definitely, first and foremost, always make sure you have a good connection with a securities attorney so that you can bounce ideas off of them. And then find somebody that's done it before. Get that fund started, start sharing with your friends, family, your network, and then bring other people along for the ride. And by doing so, you get a little bit extra of the pie as well. You get a little extra piece of the pie because you're helping bring these people into deals that these operators need.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the shameless plug there. Would love to know, Dallon, what would be maybe one or two different ways that our listening audience can learn more about you, get connected, especially if they're capital raisers themselves or they're looking to monetize their own, personal and professional network because they just love real estate as much as you and I do. What would be maybe a couple of different ways that my listening audience can engage with you directly?
Absolutely. LinkedIn, we're going to start putting out a lot of content just around CRMs, relationship building, how to master a CRM, whether it's ours or somebody else's. So LinkedIn, and that's going to be channeled to some YouTube content and videos as well. And then a phone number, I'll just give that to you right now, 623-624-1190. That's our company business line. If you text that, if you call that, we're going to get it. And then if you have any questions or want to connect further, from there, we'll be able to address any needs or questions that you have.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And we'll put that in the show notes for today's episode. Dallon, thank you again for the tremendous value that you brought us today.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.